check the stream.
Check, check.
We're a couple minutes late.
Check, check, check. Check.
Still looking.
Refresh. It's live now. I hit the live now button. We're there.
A couple minutes late. I saw it.
Okay.
Oh, there we are. Hey, look at that.
Real good.
Uh-oh, hold on. I'm trying to...
I can tell you about my live stream.
Go ahead.
Go on.
Well, if you go to hencam.com.
Oh, I've heard about this.
That's my wife's website that I run. And there's 2 live streaming cameras 24/7 on our chickens in the backyard.
Mm.
All right, let me check this out.
Delicious. Delicious cam.
Delicious cam. Mark, you looking good?
Thank you, kind sir.
Welcome back. You know, it's been a little while. We've had a little bit of a break.
Dan should do the show every other year.
You think so?
Well, if they'd quit flying me all over the world, I could actually, be here on a Thursday. So I think I'm good now for a while.
It's kind of weird that you're so dark.
Well, let's see if I can change that. I got my hue lights set to purple or pink or something. Hold on. I wasn't prepared for the camera part of it.
That's all right. We aren't either.
Let's see. Arcade, hold on.
Ooh.
Oh.
Okay, so which of you is which?
So I'm the guy with the T-shirt on with the red logo here.
Okay.
And then Mark is the one with the sunglasses.
Mark is Corey Hart there.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Wait. There you are. Okay.
Yep.
I'm the purple one.
Yeah.
Purple lights in the corner.
Perfect.
I can't get my lights any brighter unless I change them all around here.
I just see 2 of you, right? Just 2 of you?
Yeah,
Okay.
you'll probably only see 2 of us until Dan stops doing whatever he's doing in the dark.
Yeah.
Nintendo Atari guy just joined the chat. Hey, 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 he says. I'm going to give a couple more minutes. There's 9 people in the chat right now, but they're just quiet.
What?
9.
Mm-hmm.
9.
9.
9.
Well, what do you think? Should we just get this thing going?
Are you watching this Man in the High Castle series? This is really good.
I have not seen it. Who's the man in the high castle?
Oh, well, I can't tell you that.
I don't know.
Top secret.
That's weird. We'll show the hen cam later.
Yeah.
All right. Let's rock and roll, guys. What do you think?
Sure.
This is the season 3 premiere, right?
Yeah.
There's 2 people watching, so.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 people. Well, there's 3 people, but there's 9 people watching the stream, and then there's 3 people in the chat right now. So we got.
Yeah,
Andy.
but I'm one of the ones watching the stream, so that doesn't really count.
Are you doing? Don't do math. Don't do math.
Yeah.
All right. That's 6 people then, right? 7? I don't know. 4.
I stopped mine,
2.
so it's not me.
Good. All
It's
right.
going up.
Sweet. 10 are watching now. Howdy, hey. Andy says we can start with what's in the juke. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for that permission. All right, let's get this thing going.
All right, let's do it. Wait.
Live from KOIR Studios in Minneapolis, Minnesota, this is Arcade Radio. Intruder alert, intruder alert.
Hello and welcome to the Season 3 premiere of Arcade Radio. This is Episode 1 of Season 3. Thanks for joining us in the Arcadosphere. Today is October 18th, 2018, and the time is now 7:23-ish, right? Central. And I am joined by the legendary Dan Reed. Yes, believe it, ladies and gentlemen, he is back. And also, Mr. Mark Time Runner Shields. I am your host, Mr. Adam Stevens, and today, the guest host of Arcade Radio is the former GCC employee, MIT dropout and graduate, creator of Super Missile Attack, Crazy Auto, and maybe something to do with Food Fight, Mr. Steve Golson. Welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
I hope I got some of that right.
Mostly.
We'll talk about
I'll
that.
admit to all the good parts.
Good. All right, so this is the part of the show where we usually talk about what we've been working on. So, Dan, what have you been working on? Welcome back, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be back.
First of all, tell us why you were gone.
Well, work had me flying quite a lot. I have a lot of frequent flyer miles right now because of that. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah.
So you still working on that TMNT or what's going on?
Sadly, it's done. But yeah, I literally cut the back door for it today. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, not one of my speediest restores, but I blame that on my travels.
Well, and the weather's been horrible in Minnesota for like the last month.
Yeah, I bought a propane heater, and that's something I typically wouldn't do.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, after all, it was like August.
Yeah.
So, Mark, what have you been working on?
Well, this weekend is the Houston Arcade Expo. If you are somewhere near Texas, I suggest you visit arcadecenter.com and come and visit us. We've got over 300 games. I think we're actually at 318. I am bringing a 1943.
No, oh, nice.
Ooh.
I sold one of those.
I thought you were bringing a Joust.
Well, I'm bringing both, the Super Joust and a 1943.
And by Super Joust, what do you mean?
Well, it's got a J-Rock board in it, so it's got more than Joust.
Bubbles.
Bubble.
Arcade. Yeah. A little bit of Robotron.
Blaster, Robotron.
Nice.
But I mean, it's going to masquerade as a Joust. I am trying to sell it for $2,000, so feel free to bring your cash.
Nice. And you're going to play in the band.
Oh. Yeah, go on.
Oh, right. So I bought a bass keytar.
Nice.
It is amazing. They were gonna have me play on the keyboards, and I'm like, why am I doing? I'm only playing bass notes, so so I'm going for it. The band is called Loaded Popcorn, and we're playing for one night only this Friday night at the Houston Arcade Expo.
So a quick question for you. Can we play a sample of a song?
Sure. Which one did I give you?
Moon Patrol, play that music.
Right. Yeah, sure, you can play some of that.
Should I play? I mean, because will Kevin be okay with it? I mean, I don't want to like bust you guys out. Should I do it?
Kevin? Who's Kevin?
I don't know. Who's the guy that's the lead singer?
Oh, you mean Keith? Yeah. I was like,
Keith.
We all have a mortal enemy named Kevin. You're talking to him?
All right,
no.
I'm gonna play a little bit of this. This is
yeah. Go ahead. It's gotten even better since we did that.
This is a little bit of pop. What's her name again? Popcorn.
Loaded Popcorn.
Loaded Popcorn. All right.
Stop. That's enough.
So there's a little sound check there.
It's called Moon Patrol.
What is it called?
Arcade Expo.
Who's going nuts on the guitar?
No other shows were hurt in writing this song, okay? Just want to let everybody know that. No other expos.
I'm getting some
conventions were hurt.
lag here. I don't know if that's going to go.
No, we know.
Getting close.
They made.
I don't know. Seriously, like, YouTube just totally gave up on me right now.
Be in their arcade heaven crying right now. They might have a crying face right now. All right, I would like to have Mark, the key bass.
Key bass.
Start off with.
There you go. That's a little Moon Patrol, boys. That's our mark right there. All right, I'm just going to play a clip of it, so that's good. That sounds awesome. I can't wait to hear the studio version.
All right, way to go, Adam. Now we're going to have copyright problems.
I know. Steve, how you doing? I think
I'm doing okay, other than being, have a cold.
That's terrible.
I'm doing great.
So
glad to be here.
Are you working on anything in the hobby today? I mean, last year at this time you were at the Portland Expo, weren't you?
No.
2 years ago, maybe.
2 years ago,
okay.
Maybe.
There you go.
It was a couple years ago.
Cool. So
I was in Portland.
You have I know you have a little collection yourself. Are you working on any games? Are you working on anything that's arcade related right now, or are you just working?
I'm just working. Non-game related.
So sad.
I try to keep my own games operating, and that's about the closest I get.
Yeah, I'm in that boat right now.
Yeah.
So why don't you just give us a quick rundown of the games you do have?
Okay. The first one I bought long ago. So I started buying these when GCC was happening. So this is
my God.
Early 80s, right?
That's awesome.
And we would go to the auctions. There were auctions held that all the local operators would go to, and people would sell. These are route guys who ran routes or guys who owned arcades, and they would sell their extra games and they would buy other games. So this was not home collectors. These were guys in the business, right?
Sure.
And the first one I got was an Asteroids, and it was in really mint condition because actually I guess maybe I bought that from a friend. I'm trying to remember now. It was so long ago. But that was in really the cabinet just in beautiful condition. So I bought Missile Command. I bought Asteroids. And then pretty quickly I bought a Ms. Pac-Man at auction.
Oh. And
it also was in really good cosmetic shape. So I was happy to have that.
When did you get that one?
I guess I've had those two the longest.
When did you get Miss Pac? Back in 80 or 82, 81-ish? 83 maybe?
Probably 83.
Sure.
Yeah, something like that. It was not the same year it came out. I think it might have been 83, 84. Right so at that point, people were starting to get rid of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm happy to have that. Let's see, what else did I pick up? Oh, and I got a Robotron early on as well.
Really?
Got the Robotron in 84, I think. I still have the receipt. I bought it from one of the companies that ran arcade routes, and so they were getting rid of it, and I got it from them. The other thing I got early on was Paragon pinball game.
Oh, cool.
From my friend Tom Westberg, who was at GCC, and actually he had worked at Atari out in California. That's a fun story that he will tell.
Nice.
But he had a Paragon because he worked for one of the local route operators and doing maintenance and whatnot. And they had a bunch of Paragons, and so he put together one that was beautiful. He got the best playfield and the best back glass and put it all together. And he had this Paragon game that he owned, but then he was moving to California, and so he didn't want to take it, and he sold it to me. So that was 85, something like that. So anyway, so that was sort of the beginning of my collection. And since then, what do I have now? I've got Stargate,
sweet,
Missile Command,
nice,
Junior Pac-Man, Food Fight.
Junior Pac-Man is so good.
What do I have? I got a Space Invaders.
Sweet.
Which actually works. It actually sort of works when you power it up, but it needs some tender loving care. But it comes up enough to actually play it, which is pretty astonishing. So
just a quick aside here, I guess. Junior Pac-Man, was that a GCC game?
Yes, that's a fun story there.
We should talk about that in a little bit because I love that game, and I know that may have been sort of the last straw for Namco. I'm not really sure, but they got a little uptight about things getting produced by Bally and not by them. As at least as I understand it. You may correct me. I'm not sure.
No, that's that. Yeah, there
misnomer?
was some unhappiness going around.
Yeah.
But they pretty much all settled our differences in, by '84.
Sure. They're making all the money
at that
anyway.
point, everything was dead, right?
Right.
The
I suppose.
arcade business was dead,
Oh.
and so it was like,
sad.
okay, let's settle up our differences, and then that'll be that. And so.
Well, you guys really try to keep it going, so. Well, I've been working on a few things. Dan asked me about my journey. It's back on track. I did some Bondo work yesterday. I've got some sanding to do in the next couple of days, the next week, while we still have a few warm days left in Minnesota. And by warm, I mean like above 50. So, and then I bought a Cabaret DK and a Cocktail Crazy Climber over the break. The Cabaret DK is probably going to end up in a trade for an Omega race upright, which I have been really wanting, so I'm super excited about that. And we're going to have Steve Barbie on next week. Or not next week, but the next episode. So 2 weeks from today, Grinkfest 6 postmortem. So that'll be fun. Because both Mark and I were there. We won't talk too much about that today, but we had a blast. Did you have a blast, Mark?
I would describe it as a blast. Yeah,
I had a great time. I was really thankful I got to hang out with you guys. Thanks for not kicking me out of your little friends group because I was been very lonely. So anyway,
no, you were fine.
Retro USB has this thing called the AVS. I'm probably not going to talk about that a whole lot, but it's been out for a few years. I finally got one. I highly recommend it. It's a FPGA Nintendo that they make. So I've been playing with that for the last couple days. Super stoked about it.
Wait, what? An FPGA and has Donkey Kong Jr., that kind of stuff on it?
No, it's a Nintendo Entertainment System that's been FPGA'd. So it's not like the Retron or yeah, it's an NES. So it's not like the Retron or any of the emulated consoles that came out after they lost the patent went up. But this thing is actually legit, plays every single cartridge you could ever want on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So I'm super excited about it because I can run every cartridge I have on it. It plays
can't you do that? Can't you just hack the NES Mini?
That runs emulation on an ARM processor.
Yes.
Yep. So it's not FPGA.
Good.
FPGA is it's like legitimate Nintendo hardware. There's no lag. There's no. You wouldn't know you're not playing on a Nintendo if they hid it behind a curtain. So, I'll talk about that later though. That's not really what we're here to talk about this week. We this is a sad segment that we've been missing Dan for a long time. So we're looking forward to this next segment. I think we should roll here right now with
It's the negative news with Dan Reed.
That's what we've been waiting to hear, right?
Wow.
Jeez. I'm not your father.
Jeez.
All right, give us the lowdown. What's happening?
The Halcyon. Are you guys familiar with it?
Yes.
Snorted it. What?
I don't think so.
Tell
So
tell us about it.
I don't know. It's kind of in the news, but it's being touted as the rarest console ever. Adam, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, but the guy who developed it, Rick Dyer, he also was behind the creation of Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, Chime Traveler. In his infinite wisdom, he decided he was going to branch off and start this company called RDI.
What does that stand for?
Well, I think you can figure it out.
Rick Dyer Industries?
Probably, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He got some people excited about his Laserdisc home console, including Merv Griffin.
Merv Griffin.
Does that date the thing or what? So it was supposed to be the console of the future, originally designed to work. I don't know what the RCA capacitance disc system.
Oh, so that was previous to Laserdisc. Steve, you remember the capacitance disc system?
From RCA, yes.
So
yeah,
it ran on a
it
needle.
Was, I can tell you all about that.
Oh yeah, tell us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Philips developed the Laserdisc system, which was the big, humongous, 12-inch, 15-inch, or whatever discs.
Yep, 12-inch. Yeah.
And that was the first Laserdisc player, and but then RCA came up with this idea for how to do one that was cheaper, because the Laserdiscs were expensive things, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this is even before there's really VCRs.
Okay.
So this is how you're going to watch movies at home.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so RCA came up with this thing that they called
Selectivision?
CED, capacitive electronic disc. Something.
Yeah.
And it basically was a vinyl with grooves.
Uh-huh.
All right.
So as
tiny little grooves.
So as I understand it, there was a disc inside a cartridge, and you would it was like a 12-inch cartridge, and you would slide this big disc into the machine, and there's a needle in there, right?
I have one. You want me to go get it for you?
Oh my God, that's hilarious!
Yeah. No way.
Yeah, well,
you're not on camera.
The reason is because at GCC, when we were developing the 7800 for Atari, we developed it with a video disc interface, and it was going to connect to the RCA video disc system.
Okay.
Oh, funny.
This is hilarious because I picked this news article not knowing that you had any connection to it at all.
Oh yeah. So when we were working on 7800, there's a little expansion port on the side to talk to the video disc player, and to the fancy word was something called Genlock, because you had to synchronize the vertical sync of the video disc player with the vertical sync coming out of the 7800. Then you could do Dragon's Lair sort of stuff, right?
Yeah,
You've got this cool background, and then you've got the computer graphics on top of it.
You guys were working at innovation. Holy crap.
That was more Firefox, right? I think Dragon's Lair was purely Laserdisc.
Oh yes, you're right. Yeah, Firefox had was the one with the
Mach 3 and Firefox, that stuff. Yeah, that's cool, man.
That's really
we had an arcade project going as well, a game called Laser Rail, but that was going to be Laserdisc.
Interesting.
And that's a fascinating story, Laser Rail. So
the first capacitance disc that I ever saw was Romancing the Stone.
Yeah.
Wow, they had one of those?
Yeah, you could buy the players. They were out, man. They didn't last very long, but
I've never seen them.
Yeah, actually, I think one of my buddies up the street has one. His name is Matt, and he's got a. I think just like you, Steve, he happens to have a player. Do you ever dig that thing out?
I do not, but I know right where it is. And,
you should try it out.
Package it all up and find a good home for it.
What do you say? Send it over to me. I'll play with it. That's awesome.
Or just put it on eBay. Or put it on eBay, Steve, because this jackass is putting it on right now for $30,000. Although he's lowered his pre-sale down to $2,000.
The Halcyon.
I've got discs for it too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
So, in the same note, I just learned about something else the other day too. There's actually a company out there right now that, if you want to, you can get a video disc imprinted on a record, and you can actually do it right now. So if you wanted to take a recording, you can send them this recording, and they will actually put it on a vinyl disc for you, and then you buy this intermediary. I don't know. It's like some sort of interface, and you hook it up to your TV and play it on your record player, and you can actually get video, like super low quality video, from this record that they'll press for you.
That's terrible.
Wow.
Sounds terrible.
I used to have a video camera that used cassette tapes. That was awesome. Pixel Vision, I think. Pixel 2000. Have you ever heard of that? Made by Fisher Price.
Yeah. It is a cassette record. Yeah, that thing is awesome.
Analog video. Good times.
That thing is horrid. It's horrid.
There was a
using it, but
okay. Here's a retro story that actually ties in with GCC.
All right, cool.
Back in the early '80s, if you wanted a silicon video sensor they were outrageously expensive, all right? But there was this company called Micron Technologies that made DRAMs.
Yeah.
And this company in Idaho, they actually still exist, Micron, right? You can buy DRAM that says Micron on it.
Sure.
And what Micron figured out was that their DRAM was designed in such a way that it was sensitive to light. And if you put a window on top of the DRAM package, you could use it as a sensor, a really, really cheap silicon sensor.
Oh,
all right,
interesting.
and really low res, but it would work. And basically, you just read it like DRAM because it's a DRAM, right? We actually were working on that at GCC. We had a product called Intergalactic Patroller, and it was going to be a remote control car that had video. And so it had one of these. One of these was one of the ideas for having the video sensor for it because it was so low cost.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I may have one of those kicking around somewhere too. I don't know.
There was a big Micron office here in Minneapolis too. I had friends that worked there. So.
Yeah, I mean they're huge. They were like the last American memory company that survived. Yeah. And now they still survive in name.
Yeah.
And after various mergers and acquisitions and things. But back then, so they had this product that was
they make crucial memory.
DRAM optical sensor.
Oh yeah, DRAM optical sensor. That's awesome.
See, I'm just a font of old guy knowledge.
Well, that's what we're counting on. I mean,
and the best thing is, you have no clue whether I'm making it up as I go along.
Sam, I am doing some Wikipedia searching.
Are we being trolled right now?
I'm totally on the Wikipedia right now too.
Yeah, if you could just make up one really big, fat, fake thing.
Fake news.
Awesome.
Okay, I'll try and sneak in some fake news here. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Other arcade news here. 1,100 new arcade games have been added to the Internet Archive for your entertainment. So if that is your jam, what?
I just said sweet.
Oh, I thought you said what? Yeah. So if you're wanting to go back and play some titles from the 80s and 90s, just head on over to the Internet Archive.
What kind of games do they have on there?
Moonwalker.
Oh, I love
Narc.
Oh.
Jungle King.
Really?
Gauntlet Dark Legacy. That's scary. Like that. Archive.org, ladies and gentlemen.
I heard you could play Eek also, which is kind of rare.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, that's awesome.
Look it up. And moving along real quick here, Mark, you want to talk a little bit about the Houston Expo there, pal?
Tomorrow, there's a whole article about it. This is great.
Tell us about it.
It's funny.
Well, since you're going to be there.
Since I'll be there, it's funny. They call it the Houston Area Arcade Group.
Yeah.
HAG. I don't like it. HAG is a terrible name.
Yeah. Unless you're playing Popeye.
Those are all my buddies, and they're holding their 17th annual Arcade Expo starting on October 19th and 20th, this Friday and Saturday at the Houston Marriott West Chase.
That's tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, tonight I'm going to go up there with my, aforementioned Super Joust, and then drink a few burrs with them.
Sans Marquee. Thanks, Rich.
Oh my God.
Sans Marquee, although I know some guy that is this guy Gary, who my friend Aaron is in. I wonder if Gary will ever listen to this. You know what? I probably hold that back. It's a little bit too much information.
Wow.
He likes Gary.
Oh.
But there's a different thing. I can't talk about it. I would love to. Will they ever listen to this? I don't know. Anyway, so there's going to be tournaments. There's going to be events, music. With the aforementioned Guitar, 300 games, blah, 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 blah. Show up. Bring money.
Well, that just sounds great.
Yeah. That does sound great. And then one more thing I want to point out to everybody. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, because it's tough because I just was at Grinkers last weekend, and now I have to do this. And some anniversary with the wifey. So.
Yeah. All right.
A lot of stuff.
I'm sorry.
Did you have something else to add before we shut down the news?
Yeah, one more thing. I just want to tell everybody here is the latest list of barcades that are opening, and that just means all these places will be getting Paperboys. So that's 10 more Paperboys you guys won't be getting your hands on anytime soon. Arcade Odyssey in Brooklyn, New York. Arcade Monsters in Florida. The Quarters in Massachusetts.
Oh my God.
Barcade, the greatest name ever. Barcade, right?
Well, that's because, you know, that they own the patent or the trademark on that.
Oh, do they really?
Yep.
That would be quite the thing to
I
own.
got sued by them, remember? Anyway.
Nice.
Go
They're
on.
in Jersey.
Wow.
Yep.
And then Melbourne, Australia. Quarters
Nice.
Brewing Company.
Great. It's like
And 16 Bar, New York.
So it's like 18 barcades open this week. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's 18 less Paperboys in the world. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Your arcade
Dang
news.
it.
Over to you, Mark.
Back in '82, I used to be able to throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
Back to the cave with Time Runner.
Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
Welcome to Back to the Cave. Don't hit your head on that DeLorean door when you get out, because everybody does.
Ouch.
Let's talk about technology news. Yeah, I know. It always happens. I usually let it happen because I think it's hilarious. After they hit their head, I'm like, watch out for the door. Anyway, other than Miss Pac-Man coming out, you know, this is the date that we're picking, February 13th, 1982. Let's talk about what else was going on. Atari released I don't know why they call it this. This is what somebody put on Wikipedia. Early survival horror game.
On the 2600, not possible.
Yes.
Haunted House. I love that game.
I know, me too, but I wouldn't call it a survival horror game. That's weird.
I do. It was scary. I was scared when I was a kid playing that.
So that game, written by James Andreessen, published by Atari in February. The player, represented by only a pair of eyes, must navigate the haunted mansion of the late Zachary Graves to recover 3 pieces of an urn. It's been identified as one of the earliest examples of the survival horror genre by GameSpy magazine, which I have never read. What do you think of that?
I love it.
You know, I think Haunted House would have been better if it had been like a full-blown arcade game, but you know, this is one written specifically for the console. That's kind of funny.
I mean, isn't really every arcade game or every Atari game a survival game? Let's be honest here.
Yeah, you're trying not to die, right?
Right. Like Adventure is
Exactly.
a early survival horror game,
those
technically.
chickens are always trying to kill you. Okay, so also on this date at the box office, audiences could not get enough of Katharine Hepburn saying, "You old poo," and that kid talking about sucking face, while on the dock as Grandpa Fonda pondered how cheap gasoline used to be. That's right, On Golden Pond continued its multi-week triumph in the box office, most likely disturbing the arcade lives of many students who were dragged to the cinema by unrepentant parents yearning for another hit of Fonda before he kicked the bucket.
Wow.
Everybody here remember On Golden Pond? I don't know. Was there room for that within anybody's lives, or was it? What did you do? I think I watched it on video first.
Never saw it.
I don't think I've ever seen it either.
I remember it, but I never saw it.
You old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a big cinemaphile at the time, but well, if you weren't into the cinema, there was the TV, and the best thing on February 13th, 1982, which in my opinion was Fantasy Island, always a good go-to TV show.
Okay, I have to interject here. They just announced a Fantasy Island movie.
No way.
Yes.
Yeah,
They
the
better
biopic,
use-
right?
Guy Ricardo Montalban and whoever that little short guy was.
The plane.
Hervé.
Tattoo.
Hervé Villachez. Yes.
Yeah,
wife
it's a
beater, but
biopic
still a
about
great
him.
actor.
Right? It's a biopic about Hervé.
Hervé Villachez.
I don't
Exactly.
know. I think I saw it on CNN when I was flying by the
I
news
have
article.
theory
and I was like,
Mr. Rourke was a hologram and Hervé was pulling all of the wires, but so hey, tonight's episode, it was a brand new episode. It was called The Challenge / A Genie Named Joe. And because they always did like 2 different, things that were going on at the same time. They switched back and forth. So some guy, a wealthy businessman named Douglas Picard, no relation, was about to take Fantasy Island away from Mr. Rourke. So I'm sure that was like a barrel of laughs. And then a florist named Rebecca Walters, probably the most common name a writer could come up with in TV in 1982. She enlists the assistance of a genie to find her perfect husband.
Mm.
And I'm like, why would you use a garage door opener to find yourself, Mr. Right? That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
Man, that's a low-key laugh. Okay, good. This is a tough audience here. Adam, what's in the juke?
Hello and welcome to What's in the Juke.
Wait. Okay. Oh.
What? Is it over?
I think
if you could more little loops at the end, that'd be great.
Did it. So we have some tracks to listen to. Is everybody ready?
And we're gonna use the YouTube feed, not the one you see, but it's the one that a listener. If you're just watching it, that's the one that you're gonna see the results on. So if something you type looks like it showed up first, that doesn't matter. We're using what we see, and that will also be the version that is recorded. So that disclaimer is over.
And I just also want to point out that this first song came from Mark's personal collection.
I did not pick these songs. I had a whole other set of songs, and then Adam was like very antsy at 6 p.m. He's like, "Where's your shit?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's not ready yet."
Oh my God! You just called that out on the air. That's awesome.
Hey, Dan Reed's here. I feel comfortable.
Nice.
Great. So, we'll just play the clips like we always do. Here's number one. Here you guys go.
Oh, it's a brand new season, huh?
Whoa, that is not what
the
I
hell's
planned.
that? Wow. That sounds familiar. Are we at the...
to be your lover?
That's the clip.
Oh, shoot me in the head now.
Oh, yeah.
These are from the Hot 100, so while I did pick
allegedly.
them, they were in the Hot 100.
You picked a good little chunk of it there that no one's going to know. Should have gone to the
horrid.
refrain.
It's horrid. I can't imagine people are using it, but whatever.
Me neither, Dan. Is it Dan? Is your name just Dan, or are you Daniel or Danny or?
Well, whatever. I don't know why.
I don't know. Like, what's on your birth certificate?
Oh, Daniel.
Did anybody get it? Nobody's gotten it yet.
Nobody's got it. Wait. Andy Baldwin.
Andy Baldwin with both. He got both. So Andy gets
full point.
Yeah, he gets a full point. All right, next track.
That's easy. Everybody better know that one.
I love that. Perl programming language. Some dude was programming in front of me one day, and every time he made an error, that tone would go off.
Andy gets the title, but does not get the artist. Steve got the artist. So, half point for Andy, and a half point for Steve, who is in the game.
Half point.
Which Steve? Not my Steve.
Steve talking?
You can jump in here, Steve, by the way.
I'm the wrong Steve. Okay, sure.
It's Steve Golson. Yeah, he could jump in, but he'll kill everyone because he's real time. All right.
Such a cool last name. What's the background behind that? Are you, Norwegian? What is that?
Mark, what's your thing with names tonight, pal? Ease up.
I'm just into.
Ease up.
What the hell? What's going on?
Play the next song.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Oh, come on. That's not even a... Was that a hit song?
It was a hit song.
It was?
Yes, in the Hot 100 in February of 1982.
I suppose. Miami Vice had a few hit songs.
Not the A-Team.
Yeah.
Not Airwolf. You guys are close.
Think mustaches.
Ooh, Ryan pulls it out. S1500 gets a... Oh, no, he doesn't get a full point. He gets a half point. And Casey... All right, well, who did it, guys? Who did the song?
Well, no one's going to know that.
S1500 is the...
Well, you might if you're a music nerd like me. Close. Not Steve Polst. Oh my gosh, that's Steve. Steve. Change the first name to Mark.
I figured because he did all of them. So
yeah, it's not
but it
Steve
wasn't
though.
him?
You got the last name correct. Mark Post.
Good job.
I'm gonna give.
Oh yeah, whatever. Okay.
I'm gonna give you the last name. You know, the guest is Mike Post, and you're right, Andy. It's Mike, not Mark. So me and Steve both got it wrong. So
Half point.
and half point. We'll give it to Steve anyway because he's the guest, and that's what you do. All right, next song. Here we go.
Stop. Everyone will know that. That
Well,
was
why do
easy.
I have to stop? It was 2
Because
seconds.
you should only give like
it was
one
2
beat.
seconds.
That's plenty. That's cheating.
I'm gonna play that clip again because Dan was talking over it.
God.
Ryan,
You guys better get that.
Ryan got it for the half point,
Half
and
point.
Casey's on the board with Forgenegener.
Half point.
All right, next one. Is that enough, Dan?
Wait,
Yeah.
did Casey get a half point? I gotta figure.
Someone's
it out.
gonna get
Casey
this wrong.
got half.
They're gonna go for the other guy. Roll it.
Casey got Under Pressure and Queen. Casey gets a full point.
Full
5
point.
point. Oh.
All right. Next
This
one.
one's gonna throw people.
All right.
Tony, we know you think you were first, but you were not first.
Yeah, Tony. when you type Tony, the script puts whatever you typed immediately on the screen, but that's not what shows up in the stream. So whatever shows up in the stream is the way we do it. If you were to refresh your screen, whatever you typed is going to be in a different place.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to have to do is put our chat in the window at some point so people can see what's going on. But
Yeah,
anyway,
we'll figure that out.
We'll figure that out.
This week
This week
put
we're
the
just
chat.
fine.
Whatever,
All right,
whatever we get in the stream chat, that's
the next
final.
few are maybe a little harder. Here we go.
there's a quick story. I actually walked behind this guy one time when I was at Mardi Gras.
Really?
He's
Really?
short. Oh yeah, it was weird. I have it on video too.
Did he
Tom
smell
Cruise
good?
Short.
Even shorter, I think.
Oh,
He's a wee man.
we got Rod Stewart. Casey's got half point. Young Turks. Ryan pulls it out for half point.
Half point.
Casey, half point. Ryan.
Half point.
Wait, is Ryan on the board now for the first time?
No, Ryan should have at least a point. He's had a couple. Also, he was the only one to really correctly answer David Bowie and Queen, so you should just put another half point on Ryan.
All right,
All right,
got it.
next one.
Oh my god, this guy's cool. I wish I could beat him.
He's so awesome. I'm going to play it one more time.
Okay, a hint for people would be. he
Oh,
just
no,
got
no.
fired.
Casey Relford got Lindsey Buckingham right out of the gate.
Whoa.
And he got I'm in
What?
trouble. Okay, we're going to give that to
Wow.
I think we have to give half a point to Ryan though because he got the title correct.
Wow.
What do you think?
Okay, sure.
Ryan
Sure.
half point, Casey half point.
Half point.
Yeah, because
Half
it's just
point.
called trouble. But you did Casey. You were right on it. Blammo! Oh my God! All right. Next one.
Wow.
Hmm.
Way
Yeah.
too long.
No, it's fine. By the way, we have 18 people in the chat, including us, which is great.
I'm not logged in.
New subscriber Brad Hill. Welcome to the show. Love it.
Hey, Brad.
We got Brian Frober. We got Steve Take. Stevie Nicks. Correct. Andy Baldwin. Correct. That's a half point for.
Full point.
Oops. That's a full point for those two, but half point for
Half point.
Andy Baldwin and half point for
Half point.
Brian Frober.
Hey, is Kelsey in the chat?
Yeah, we've been calling him Casey. So,
Oh.
by the way,
not Brian because he didn't get both artists.
right, exactly, right. You gotta.
So he's got a half.
He gets a half, right?
You
So
got 0.25 points, or
it's true. He gets a quarter of a point. I think Steve's
Okay.
correct.
Point.
Who's the other artist, you guys? I think Andy Baldwin gets that.
No,
Or-
Casey got it right. Steve Nicks, Don Henley.
You got it. It
Stevie
is Casey. Casey, you get half point.
Half point.
And who got the name correctly? Was it Casey also? No, it was Andy. So Andy got.
Okay, I already gave him his.
Okay, great.
So wait, we're taking it away from Brian. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
All right. Yeah. Let's everybody get in a fight.
You know what? What are they saying exactly? Oh! Nobody says that.
Begin.
And nobody spelled Lindsey Buckingham correctly.
Nope, it's with an E. Well, actually, Steve, you got it right.
Yes.
Dude, there's a new episode
Smackdown.
of Riverdale on Hulu right now.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Next song.
That was a low point for Don Henley, by the way. What a dumb song.
But Stevie Nicks, he probably just wanted to get close to her because she was super hot.
I did miss Dan until a minute ago. Okay, so this song is Dan's favorite song.
What? Oh, yeah.
Apparently, you sound like 34K.
Who?
You.
No, I don't.
Oh, Casey nailed it. Casey got Bertie Higgins and Key Largo.
Wow.
Holy crap.
That's a one-hit wonder, too. Good job.
Full point.
Wow. Let's play a little more of that.
I'm glad.
Dan, do you want to dance? I love Casey. Bam! Blammo! Blammo! By the way, before we do the last song tonight, last year's winners are going to receive T-shirts.
Real T-shirts, not just pictures of T-shirts.
Right. I had a little problem with the printing company, but they did come in. And so here's what they look like. All right. I'm holding them up. Can you see them okay? How do they look?
Yeah.
You get a choice of small or petite. Those are your two options for shirts.
Right. So those are the T-shirts. They came in actually today. So I'll be mailing them out to Randall, Casey, and actually Frober. Brian
There you
Frober.
go.
So
Brian.
we're giving away 3 T-shirts for the season finale of last. All right, now here's the last clip. All right, here we go. Oh, that's still Key Largo. Here we go. That's a little bit more difficult, don't you think?
I love that. I want to learn how to play that.
AC/DC, of course, everybody's going to get AC/DC. Casey got it, though. He gets that half point right out of the gate. Oh, let's get it up.
Yep, he did the whole thing.
All right, we'll give him a full point. All right, tally it up, Mark. What do we got going?
Casey kicked everybody. It was a 5-point lead.
Casey.
I don't even think it's yeah.
Well,
everybody else. I
he
think
came from
Andy was
behind.
behind him, and then Ryan.
Nice guy. Nice work, guys. Blammo, blammo, blam.
Wow.
All right, I absolutely love What's in the Juke, so thanks for playing along. That is a great segment, and you guys make it great by making it fun, so keep trying. And we're up to 20 people watching now. This is fantastic. If you missed What's in the Juke, play back in a little bit. It was a super fun time. I think this actually brings us to, the next segment. Or no, we need to check the voicemail. We should check the voicemail.
Yeah, somebody calls us.
All right, let's check it out.
Really?
Thank you for calling 612-548-GAME. This is Arcade Radio. Please leave your message after the tone.
Hey everybody, it's your buddy Bob Zarzadek giving you another call. It's a brand new season. I'm really pleased that you guys were able to make it for another one. Not like that Roseanne show where somebody had to die for everybody to come back. I think it's like the reverse of dying now. Dan Reed came back. It's like he undied. He's the zombie of Arcade Radio. I like that. But enough about you guys. Let's talk about me. I have a video coming out about my new invention. I call it Zarzadexa. It's awesome. You just basically ask it a question, and it answers you in pretty much English. Here, let me give it a try. It's right here. Okay, let's start it up. Okay, Zarzadexa. What is the square root of 81? You got a phone? There's a calculator on that, you dummy. Oh, well, that's not what I was expecting it to say, huh? Zarzadexa, what's your favorite movie of all time?
Well, as long as there's bikinis and explosions, I'll pretty much watch anything.
Wow, isn't that great? I don't want to take too much of your time here. I'll leave another phone call in the week. Anyways, you guys have a great show. Take care of yourselves and look both ways, just like normal people. All right, Zarzadexa.
Oh, that was the best call ever.
Well done, sir.
Oh, God.
Well, let's get this going here. All right. Oh. Oh my God, that was good.
Pole position.
Prepare to qualify. Please welcome to the show one more time, Mr. Steve Golson. Yeah!
Hey guys, glad to be here.
Thanks for putting up with 45 minutes of nonsense.
Well, we try. We try.
It seemed like a lot more than that.
Yes,
it sure does.
I apologize.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you sticking with us. Maybe we'll send you a mug or something. It'd be great. So, like this one, this
T-shirt.
T-shirt. Okay. What's your size? You large, small?
We have small or petite as options.
Oh.
Well, we only have.
gee.
Well, I'll send you a women's small, and good luck.
A very deep V-neck. Very deep.
My wife could wear that one.
There you go.
Oh, now I gotta send you 2 T-shirts. Okay.
No, that's all right.
So
We'll work something out.
Oh, well, tell us a little bit about your arcade order. We already did. You kind of gave us a lowdown of describe what arcades were like when you were just about to enter MIT. How's that?
So I entered MIT in 1976.
Okay.
And it was just beginning to get arcade games. Right? There were pinball games, and so you would go to a pinball parlor and play pinball. But the first video game I remember was Atari Tank.
Oh yeah.
And there was one in the basement of the student center at MIT.
That's a round tabletop with black and white, right?
It was black and white. I don't recall it being round.
No, there was a tank up here, and it was like on a pedestal kind of thing. I remember
Is
seeing
that right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I remember playing it, and we would go to it was one of the things to do when you were down in the down in the student center.
Mark,
and it was not in a separate room. It was the basement of the student center. They actually had a bowling alley.
Okay.
And it was down.
Bowling alley
down
in
the bowling
center?
alley area.
This is MIT,
just
right?
the one game, and that was it.
Oh, that's crazy.
So,
Mark, did we not play Tank this last weekend?
I didn't play Tank.
I must have played with Aaron because there's a black and white tank there. It's fantastic.
Quaker's Grand Palace, Eagle, Idaho. Everybody, check it out. All right, back to you.
And basically, it became it became combat for the 2600, right?
Yes.
Yeah, vaguely. Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the first one I remember playing, and then within a year or two, boy, I cannot recall what we played, but the first game that so Kevin Kern and Doug McRae started up their partnership to do first pinball games in the dormitories, and eventually, and they started with a bunch of pinball games. Playboy was actually the first pinball that they bought, but then they got Fire One, and that was the first video game that so Exidy Fire One, and so we so that was sort of the first thing I remember really playing a lot was Fire One, and learning all the high score combinations that would cause the game to talk to you. Do you know about that?
No.
Tell us.
Do you have a Fire One? So yeah, it's Fire One, right? And so it's a 2-player submarine game. Right?
Oh, well, Atari had a game called Subs
half
too.
The screen.
Okay.
Right. and it's like what your submarine is doing, and so you see out of your periscope, and you're trying to kill the other guy's submarine and the other guy's ships and protect your own ships, and but it had high score, and so you could enter your 3 initials as high score, and I don't know who it was that discovered it first, but there were some combinations of 3 letters, and the machine would put up a message after you entered those letters.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
And so that got to be a really fun thing, was like finding all the combinations that would cause it to talk to you. And I'm trying to remember some of them, like if you said DOG, then the screen would go blank and it would say bow wow.
No way.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
yeah. And I think cat was meow, and if you said God, God, it said I am honored.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then there were certain 3-letter combinations that you can imagine that it would come up and say wash your mouth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Dr.
So there
Spatzo.
somebody must have a list of these, of all the combinations in there. But that was sort of fun for a while. It was like, what other 3-letter words might possibly be programmed into the game?
Speaking about washing your mouth out, how did you get into MIT, and what was your focus?
Yeah, how did I get into MIT?
Yes, exactly.
So I, much to my parents' chagrin. So I grew up in Amarillo, Texas.
Sweet.
And Texas, as today, has a wonderful state university system. And why would you not go to one of the many universities in Texas? Right, University of Texas, or Texas A&M, or Texas Tech, or all the state universities. And if you want, or you want to go to a private school, fine. You go to Rice, you go to Baylor, you go to TCU. There's so many.
Yeah.
And basically, and Rice was sort of the obvious choice for me because it was it's where all the nerds went, right? Yes. So if you were a math science guy, you would apply to Rice, and down in Houston. And I did, and I applied to Rice, and I went down and visited, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is kind of cool. And I certainly knew about MIT, but I hadn't really thought about it until I got one of the mailers, right? You're junior, senior in high school, and you start getting all these mailings from all the different colleges. And I got the MIT one, and of course I knew MIT, and I read through it, and I said, oh, this is cool. I like this school. I'm going to apply here. And I interviewed with an alumnus up there in the Panhandle of Texas, and he said, yeah, I haven't talked to anybody in a few years. So nobody had been applying from up there. But I applied, and I got in.
That's awesome.
And I said, that's where I want to go. And I never visited. I had never been to MIT. I'd never been to New England.
Interesting.
Until I flew in August or September of my freshman year.
You were accepted, and then you actually ended up just flying in, and for the first time and seeing. You didn't actually go out there to the.
Correct. Yeah, I never visited. So so I flew in, and my first experience of Boston traffic. So they had students who were driving. So the freshmen were flying in, right?
Yeah.
And they had students who would meet you there. They had a little MIT sign. They would meet you, and you'd jump into a car, some student's car, and they would drive you to the campus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was a hatchback, and all the seats filled up, and I had to lie on my back in the hatchback, looking straight up through the back window.
Oh my God!
And that was my introduction to Boston traffic.
Oh, good
yeah.
grief! And and it only got worse from there. It only got worse from there.
Well, until the dig.
But I started out, and my dad had worked in the oil industry. He was a geophysicist, oil exploration guy, and I thought that was kind of interesting, and so I sort of followed in his footsteps and started taking earth science classes.
That's awesome.
And that's what I was going to do.
Earth science. That's hilarious. Now, I have a tangential story to that, but I'm not going to bring that up. But I would like you to continue on with the, so you met a bunch of guys at MIT that would become GCC. Can you tell us what GCC means and who you met and how you came to be a company?
So GCC stands for General Computer Company, and it started up in 1981. And the name came about because we could not think of a better name. We were all sitting around. What name? We got to have a name. Oh, I don't know. General Computer.
And why did you think you needed a name? Like, what had you done that made you think?
Okay, so
we got to figure out.
So let me back up.
Okay.
Let me back up. All right. So I come into the way MIT works, or the way it worked back then and sort of works now, is you show up. Freshmen show up for a multi-day. They call it back then. They call it RO Week, Residence Orientation Week, and you visit all the different frats and dorms, and you decide where you want to live. And they have parties and visits, and you've read up on the different things, and you say, and you fill out a preference. Well, first of all, if one of the frats likes you, and then they might rush you, right? They might say, hey, come live with us in this frat. So you can do that, and if not, or if you don't want to, the various dorms, which all have very different styles and personalities, and you would rank them, and you would say, this dorm's my first choice, second choice, third choice, and being MIT, of course, they pour it all into a computer, and then they say, here's what you're assigned to. And most people get their first choice, pretty much, is how it works out. So I picked McGregor Dormitory, and I got in, and so that's where I lived. And the McGregor was set up back then. It was all male. Now it's mixed, but it was all male, and it was set up as suites of single rooms. They were really small rooms, but you knew you were going to get a single room if you were in McGregor. And the suites were either 6 or 8 students, and they had a little lounge, and they had their own shared bathroom, and that's how it was organized. And then 6 or so suites would be combined into a bigger living group that was called an entry. So that's the basics of McGregor House. And so the suite I was in, over the next couple years, new students moved in, and Kevin and Doug were 2 of the students who came into our suite.
Doug McRae,
Kevin Curran, and Doug McRae, and they were a year behind me. So in the fall of '77, is that right? They were 1 year behind me. So fall of '77, they came in, and were living. So we were all living in the same sort of group there. Actually, we had 2 suites that we had kind of combined. We kept the fire door propped open, and so there was actually sort of 16 of us who sort of knew each other pretty well, and so that was Kevin and Doug. But also in the same suite was John Tilko, who became part of GCC, and 1 floor down was Larry Dennison, who became part of GCC, and Chris Rode, who was a year behind Kevin and Doug, and so we were everybody knew each other.
That's awesome.
And we all lived a couple doors down from each other in the same dorm on the same floor.
That's fantastic. So you obviously had an affinity for what was going on in the industry. Kind of tell us how GCC got involved with rewriting Missile Command.
So you get the long story. So the long story is that we had a pinball game in our dorm.
Okay.
And it was some local route operator who kept the pinball game, and the students would go downstairs and drop in a quarter and play games, and we would go down and play this pinball game. And it, how shall I put this? It fell into disrepair, and the students got annoyed when the game wasn't working, and they would sort of slam it against the wall and abuse the game. And the arcade owner said, "Yeah, forget this," and he pulled his game out. So we did not have a pinball game in the dorm. Well, we had a big party that was coming up, a big dorm-wide party that was about to happen. And, we've got to have a pinball game. So Doug McCrae, one of his brothers, had an old electromechanical pinball game called Pioneer.
I have that game in my basement right now.
Do you have a Pioneer? It's Gottlieb, isn't it?
Yep,
Gottlieb?
and it's the two-player version of Spirit of 1976.
There you go.
Yep.
So they had so Doug and Doug's brother had it when he was at college in. Did he go to Princeton, I think, or Cornell, or some Ivy League something?
Yeah.
And so he had this pinball game. I don't know where he got it.
Sweet.
But Doug is like, oh, well, hey, I can get my brother's Pioneer, and we'll set it up here. And so Doug, who grew up in New Jersey, had his own car, which was really cool as a freshman. We were all really impressed that he had his own car as a freshman.
Do you know what kind of car was it?
It was a was it a Datsun 510?
There you go.
Sweet.
Is that what it was? He had one of those at some point, but that might not have been his first one. I can't remember now. I could drive it because I could drive a manual transmission and nobody else could, so I could drive his car. Anyway, he drove down to New Jersey every now and then, and so he brought back this game and set it up. And so we had this pinball game, this Pioneer game, and Doug was like, well, gee, I'll just leave it here, and wow, hey, look, I'll make money. And he and Kevin talked to him and said, we should do this as a business. I don't know who had the first idea, but it may have been Kevin who pitched it to Doug. But anyway, the two of them said, oh, well, let's start up a partnership, the two of them, to do pinball games in our dorm. They had Pioneer, and they went in 50-50, and they bought Playboy.
Nice.
Okay, so they bought Playboy. And,
it's a solid state
MIT,
game, totally
nerd guys, and they're like, ooh, Playboy, nice. And so they put that in, and that was a big success. And they wow, this is kind of, gee, what are we going to buy next? And they started getting more pinball games, and then eventually they got Fire One, and they started getting more arcade games. And then the dorm next to ours said, hey, can you come and do our dorm too? Yeah, okay. And so they eventually were at 3 different dorms at MIT. They learned how to maintain the games and run them, and that was their, hey, this is how we make money. And so that was the two of them had this little partnership and with pinball games and video games.
And so Missile Command comes out of this whole process.
That's right. So and here's another trivia thing. I probably was their first employee, if you want to call it that, because somebody needed to be on site if there was a problem, and that was one of the things that they brought to the table. Right? They say to the dorms, hey, if there's an issue, you call us because we live there, and we'll come and fix it or take care of it, or we'll give you back your quarter or whatever. And by the way, they would give 5 quarters for $1.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Get a little
they
extra.
would give out 5 quarters for $1 if they were giving you change, which was it's like, yeah, okay, but it still would work out, right? It's not like they're going to go and do laundry. You're going to get the money back. So. And eventually the two of them, they rented a house. I don't know, there were 3 or 4 of them all together, I guess, and rented a house in Brookline and moved out of the dorm. And so I was the guy who stayed behind and was sort of the guy on site. And so kind of not that I got paid, but I got to play games. So anyway, so that's where Missile Command came about. And they had 3 Missile Command games by this time, which were really popular. And they had started buying these enhancement kits. I know they bought a Super Galaxians for their Galaxian game.
Right on.
And replaced the ROMs in Galaxians. And so the idea of doing these upgrades and speed ups and things to games was something that they were familiar with, just like every other arcade owner.
Sure.
So with Missile Command, and the Missile Command did really good at MIT, and
until people got bored with it, right?
Say again?
Until people got bored with regular old Missile Command.
Well, they got good at it.
Yeah.
And so the revenues went away.
Mhm.
And yeah, so you got bored because you're playing the game and you're
You're either
beating
really,
it,
really
like
good
that.
at it for a quarter, or you just are like, I played this, I don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So from Doug and Kevin's point of view, we don't care the reason. We just know that the revenues are dropped off.
Right.
And so they started looking around for speed up kits.
Sweet.
For Missile Command.
But nobody had them.
But nobody had one. There was actually the local. So you got to understand how the arcade industry worked back then. So you had the manufacturers. You had Atari and Midway and Williams and Gottlieb and Bally and all these manufacturers who made the games, and then there would be a local distributor, which is where you would go to buy the games and to get them repaired. So here in New England, the distributor was a company called Bally Northeast, and they carried all the different lines, right? It wasn't just Bally; they carried everything. So if you were going to buy one of the new arcade games, you would go to Bally Northeast and you would order it, and they had all the brochures and they had all the parts and they did repairs, and so actually. Somebody at Bally Northeast or somebody who knew somebody, they actually were working on a Missile Command speed-up kit. But here's all they were able to figure out, because they were not doing serious reverse engineering. All they were able to do was they were able to figure out the address that contained the number of cities. All right? Mm-hmm. And they built a piece of hardware that watched the accesses to that memory location. And when you started getting lots of cities, it would change how the game played. And so it was this big chunk of hardware to do this very simple thing. And it was like, that's just dumb, right? So, but by this time, Doug and Kevin were like looking around, it's like, geez, that's the sort of thing people are going to have? Well, gosh, we could do this. Right? Why don't we build one of these? And that's in springtime of 1981. That's how it got started.
So from that, let's segue right into the Atari lawsuit. Like, how long between figuring that out and that thing happening?
So the company gets started in March. We really got started spring break of 1981. So March, like the middle of March, third week of March, something like that.
Wow.
Okay. And at this point, Doug and Kevin and Larry Dennison, who's already graduated, and John Tilko, who's already graduated, the four of them are renting a house in Brookline, all right, off campus. So they're off campus, so they've got their own house in Brookline. And in the spring of '81, January of '81, I moved in as well. They had an extra bedroom, and so I moved in. So there's like five of us in this house. And at spring break, and Doug and Kevin, they get one of their Missile Command games, and they roll it into the dining room of this house, and we start doing the disassembly of it. They went out and bought a Genrad microprocessor emulator system, and for $25,000 or whatever it cost, and we started ripping apart Missile Command. And this just seemed like what a fun thing to do. I mean, spring break, geez, we're not going to go sit on a beach. Let's tear apart this video game. And so it was Doug and Kevin and me and Larry Dennison and Chris Rode, I think, and JT, John Tilko, and we're doing the reverse engineering of this game. And then realizing Kevin and Doug were both extremely savvy business people. And they understood that if they were going to make a product, they had to have a company. You had to have an actual corporate structure. And so, and that's where the company name came about, was, oh, what are we going to call this company? And I don't know, they call it GCC, General Computer. And the actual date of incorporation was it April 1st? April Fool's? April 1st or last day of March. It was the officers of the company were Kevin and Doug and Chris Rode, and they had to put Chris Rode in there because one of the three of them had to be a Massachusetts resident, and Chris was the only one who was officially a Massachusetts resident. So there's some funny trivia for you, but that's how it got started, and so. Starting the end of March, and then April and May, and by the end of May, we were advertising our product, and we were ready to ship it.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
So, Ms. Pac was released in February of '82. When was Crazy Otto born?
Continue the story a little bit. So we finished the Missile Command kit, which we called Super Missile Attack. That finishes up in end of May, 1st of June.
Okay.
And so we start, and we did advertising, and we start getting orders, and we're making these boards and shipping them out the door. Pretty quickly, by mid-June or so, we're trying to decide, well, what's the next kit we're going to do?
Wow.
And, okay, we're done with this one. This is great. What's the next kit we should do? What game should we do another enhancement kit for? And we sort of looked at, well, you want a game with a really big installed base. Because what percentage of arcade owners are going to upgrade their machines? Mm-hmm. Well, the bigger universe of games, the better off you're going to be. So we were looking at games with really big builds. We looked at Asteroids really seriously. And Asteroids was good because it used the same processor as Missile Command, and we were already real familiar with that and could disassemble it. And so we looked at Asteroids. And so what games could we do, and what could we do to Asteroids? And really, we were thinking of a totally new game. What totally new game could we use that would fit in this cabinet with these controls? Mm-hmm. Right? And it just seemed like too much. It was a lot of work. The hardware for Asteroids was actually pretty slow, and it was going to be really awkward to try and get that to do fancy things. So one of Doug's friends, actually, I can't remember who it is. Doug can tell you the story. One of his friends said, "Hey, you should look at Pac-Man," because Pac-Man was just coming to the market in early 1981, and it was really ramping up, and you knew it was going to be a monster game. And it was already popular in Japan. You just knew it was going to be huge in the U.S. So it's going to be a big build, so that's a good thing. Number two, if we get a kit to market, we're going to get one of the problems with Super Missile Attack was Missile Command was already Pac-Man kit. Oh, we're going to get that out in late 1981, just as the game is peaking and just as players are starting to get frustrated and the revenues are going down.
Sure.
So the timing looked really good.
You guys were like thinking ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. And again, a lot of this is Kevin. In early June, we're like, oh well, let's look on Pac-Man, and so we got a Z80 microprocessor emulator system and started to work on that. And I think we were working on that and Asteroids at the same time. We were kind of playing with both of them before we decided, Pac-Man's the way to go, and just go full bore on that one.
So were you on? So you're in a lawsuit with Atari at this point, right?
No, not yet.
Okay.
That didn't happen until end of July.
Okay.
So in June, July, we're getting all kinds of press in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And companies are coming to talk to us. We had a guy from Gottlieb who came and says, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Gee, we should work a deal." And so, and we were doing some game polishing for, somebody had the rights to a Japanese game, and wanted to import it, and it needed a little work, and we said, yeah, we could do that for you. And so there was a bunch of things we had going on, and we were talking to people in the industry about, hey, they're going to invest money in us, or we're going to do a deal with you, we're going to design a game for you. So it's like, hey, this is awesome. And by mid-June, we've moved from the house in Brookline to a house out in Wayland, Mass. And again, there's 4 of us living there, Kevin and myself, John Tilko, Art Ing. The 4 of us are living in this house. Doug had just gotten married, so he lived with his wife in Wellesley. And we're doing the work at the house in Wayland. So that was sort of General Computer headquarters. Was crazy. There in Wayland, Mass. So we started hearing about the lawsuit in mid-July, July sometime.
So they must have sent
our friends at Valley Northeast were like, "Hey, Atari's upset with you, and so you're about to get sued."
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. So that's when and then the actual lawsuit filed. I can't remember the dates. End of July. 3rd week of July, something like that. And then so end of July was the first time we went in the courtroom, and then that through August. And so that
what was it like to go into the courtroom when you're that age?
Say that again.
What was it like to go into the courtroom when you were that age? You guys were kind of flying by the seat of your pants.
Oh, it was a hoot. You had to put on a suit. That was the only pain. But it was. It was like starting up a company. What a fun thing. So,
yeah. So you weren't afraid of going to jail. You were just
I was supposed to graduate, and I ended up not graduating.
Wow.
And Kevin and Doug, the same sort of thing. It was like, oh, this company, what a hoot. Let's keep working on this. This is great fun.
That's one thing that I was always curious about. Like a lot of the articles online and Wikipedia, information that talks about GCC says when you guys created Super Missile Attack and the money started rolling in, you quit MIT. Did everybody quit MIT, or did some people stay? What happened there?
Okay, so John Tilko had already graduated. He had graduated like 2 years earlier with a degree in aeroastro, and he was working for GE.
Okay.
The jet engine people.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So he's working for GE.
Sure.
Larry Dennison graduated in 80, and he was working for, can't remember who he was working for. And Art Ing the same way. He was working. He had a real job. So the people who were students was myself and Kevin and Doug and Chris Rode, who was a year behind us. If you're keeping track, I lost a year in there somewhere, but that's okay. We won't talk about that. So I took off a semester, and so I came back, and I was in the same year as Kevin and Doug, so 81 I should have graduated. So some of us had already graduated and had real jobs, and were sort of doing this GCC thing on the side. Chris Rode actually kept going as a student, and I don't think he dropped out for another couple years. So he again was kind of doing it on the side. But the ones that really dropped out was me and Kevin and Doug, and so yeah.
But that was you guys were kind of the core,
Kevin
right?
And Doug as the two main principals of the company, and both of them dropped out.
So was it just because you were just making so much money? You're like, I'm a 20-something-year-old kid. I'm making a ton of money. Forget college. I'm gonna cash in on this video game craze.
Oh well, so the money was part of it, but it was just so much fun,
Yeah.
And And it was like, yeah, if this doesn't work out, I'll just go back to school next semester.
Which you eventually end up going back, right? Because you have a degree.
I did, yeah, eventually, years later.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I
made
have
my parents really happy.
I have a quick question. Kind of, so you're being sued by Atari, but at the same time, you're still pursuing a relationship with Bally, right?
Well, not yet. We were working on our Pac-Man kit, which we called Crazy Otto, and our intent all along was to sell that like we had sold Super Missile Attack. We were just going to sell it ourselves, and take out an ad and market it and ship these little boards off to arcade owners, and they'd plug them in, and it would turn Pac-Man into Crazy Otto.
Now, I have a quick question about Crazy Otto. The sprite design must have been designed from the original Pac-Man side art, no?
That's a good question. I think that was certainly an inspiration.
Because he had legs on the side of the cabinet.
You look at the side art and you see, it's got eyes and it's got feet, and well, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
So that certainly had some inspiration. But then also the monsters we did for Crazy Otto, which had the feet and the antennas and the different shape. And
yeah, those are cool. Yeah, they remind me of those little fuzzy guys with the squiggly eyes that they sold on tops of rocks.
Yes.
They're awesome. Very 70s, very 70s.
Yes, very, very 70s. The whole thing was very 70s. So, no, our intent was to sell it as a kit like we sold Super Missile Attack. And we looked at the sort of things that Atari was complaining about as far as their claims of copyright infringement and trademark infringement and all that sort of stuff. And we said, oh, well, okay, so we'll tweak our game a little bit for Pac-Man to try and avoid those arguments, those legal issues, which we were very, very careful when we did the Super Missile Attack.
Yeah.
That we were very careful not to copy the Atari code.
Well,
So that was something that we thought about and tried very, very much to not do. We were not going to be a pirate, which was prevalent in the industry.
Sure, and the interesting thing is that was a problem, right? People were copying Pac-Man, they were bootlegging, right? And so it would be
a complete clone of the game.
Yeah.
A complete clone of the game. And maybe you would go in and search for the ASCII string in the ROM, so it no longer said Midway and it said something else, or it no longer said Atari, it would say something else.
But today it's harder. Like today, if you were to have the same kit, I think you would face a greater set of challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think it would not be legal today.
Yeah.
It would be clearly a derivative work. But back then, it was not clear.
No, and everything was new. Nobody knew.
Yeah, everything was new.
Gonna
Copyright protection for games, for the audiovisual presentation of a game, was that protected? Nobody knew.
Yeah,
because it had not been tested in court. And so we looked at it and said, the analogy Doug would often use is it's like, oh, here's a book. We're selling you an index to the book, and you glue it into the back of the book, right? Did we copy the book? No. Did we make it better? Yes, we did. And right? And it's like, okay, we edited it, we made it, we changed it a little bit, but all the original stuff is still there.
Sure.
What have we changed? We didn't copy anything.
No, that's brilliant.
And so that was I think that was a very, very compelling argument. And if the lawsuit had continued, it's very possible we might have won, which would have been bad news for
which is
Atari
why they
and
hired
all the manufacturers.
Which is why they hired you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Weren't you hired as a contractor for Atari?
Yes. So I think that Atari, or whoever's idea it was to file the lawsuit, figured that, well, we're big bad Atari, and who are these clowns are just going to roll over and be so afraid they're going to just die, and which might have worked for some people, but not for us. We were like, yeah, sure, what the hell? What do we have to lose? Nothing. You're going to make me go back to school? Gee, okay, all right. That could work out. So if I have to, that's what we'll do. So it was all right. We'll go to court. And we got an amazing attorney named Jerry Hosier. He's quite a story. Jerry Hosier is, and Jerry basically thought he really liked these kids. He's like, wow, these kids are going to do something cool, and yeah, I'll help you. I'll represent you. Cool. And Jerry was an extremely well-known intellectual property attorney based in Chicago. So having Jerry Hosier on our side, it was like people were like, wait a minute, what? How'd you get Hosier? And we said, well, we'll feed him 3 meals a day, and he's like, well, on our side. And so I think that the case could very easily have gone in our favor, that modifying the software would be a legal derivative work approved by the courts. And Atari really did not want that to happen, right? They do not want it to be legal for anybody, for the end user to modify the game. And that just scared them. So that was one thing. And then the second thing was they were impressed with the work we did. They thought it was very professional, and they could not really figure out how our kit worked.
I love it.
And so they were like, hey, these kids, they're going to keep designing games.
Right.
And they apparently Doug or Kevin, during one of the depositions, one way or the other, the Atari, I think it might have been Skip Paul, said, what do you guys want?
Right.
And they're like, well, we're going to design games. This whole kit thing was just a way to get into the industry, and we want to design entire new games.
And this is basically at the peak of the golden age of arcade games, right? We're talking 1981, 82.
81, yeah. Late 81.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, you're in the sweet spot. You're in the perfect. It's a perfect. I hate this term, but you're in the perfect storm. You couldn't have been in a better spot.
And there were other outfits like ours who were independent game developers.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was sort of a known thing of, oh, here's these 3 guys, and I've hired them to do a game for us.
Sure.
So outside of the normal, and so it was like the Boston area was sort of a new fertile ground for game engineers. And here's a way in. I mean, MIT. Sure. These guys know everybody at MIT. This is a great pipeline.
And they respect that. They respect
design.
that for sure. Yeah.
And so Atari was like, okay, well, and that's how the conversation got started.
Because they basically dropped their lawsuit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're like, screw this, we're going to hire you guys.
Drop your lawsuit.
Yeah.
And then the negotiation started for what kind of a deal was it going to be, and how was it going to be structured, and how much money, and that sort of thing.
And so instead of like suing you and out of business, they're like, we need these kids to make us some freaking games. We're gonna contract them. So eventually, you guys came to an understanding, and that must have been Doug and you and the original GCC. Trio.
It's Doug and Kevin. It's all Doug and Kevin.
Okay, so they negotiated all that stuff.
Yeah, they're the business guys. It's their partnership.
Okay.
Right. There's a few of us who were doing engineering and helping out and advising and whatnot, but all the business, all the money, it's all Doug and Kevin.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So they saw the value, and they're like, look, we don't want to stop it. It's just like everybody's loving and hugging each other and getting into the hot tub at this point. So they're like, okay.
That's the California people, but here in Boston, no, we're not in the hot tub.
Speaking of working for Atari, I've heard so many crazy stories about was it as nutty as they say, or what was going on?
Yeah, the stories we heard were that it was crazy at Atari, and there's lots of drugs, and there's lots of partying. And that was another attraction of GCC to the Atari management, and particularly Warner, right? Because Warner Communications owns Atari. And so Warner is looking at Atari, which is making oodles of money, but it's all these engineers out in California who are, spending all their time in the hot tub and with the drugs, and here are these kids at MIT that just seem to work all the time.
Right.
And so Kevin and Doug were very aware of this, and they kept us from going to California. He's like, yeah, stay away from those Atari engineers, man. They're just poison. But it was a very MIT mentality of solve the problem. Give me an interesting puzzle, and I want to solve it. I want to fix it, build it. And that was enough motivation for us. And we had the really cool profit sharing, and we had fun parties on the weekends. But damn, we worked really hard. And we would create product in just incredibly short period of time, which made the Warner people really happy, and it made the upper level Atari people really happy, and off we went. So yeah, so Atari, one of the Atari management asked him, "How do you prevent all your engineers from doing drugs?" And Kevin's like, depends on who you hire, and you give them interesting things to do, and share the wealth, and they'll do engineering for you.
That's hilarious.
But it was very different, I think, than the California culture.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, so I've been tasked with asking you this. I'm not 100% sure why, but I'm sure when you answer it will come to me.
Sure.
How do you solve a problem like Maria?
How do you solve a problem like Maria? It takes a year longer than you think.
Oh no.
That's the first thing.
Well, first of all, maybe you should explain what Maria is.
So the upshot. Excuse me. So the upshot of the Atari deal is Atari signs a deal with us that we're going to create. They're going to pay us $50,000 a month for 2 years to create product for them. And at this point, all anybody is thinking of is arcade games. All right? We're going to write arcade games for Atari. And we immediately start doing development on a handful of games. And we start hiring people. And so this is early 1982, right? And we're blasted ahead. And your date from the past there, February 13th of 1982, I can tell you exactly what I was doing, all right?
Cool,
that
tell
was
us.
a Saturday. And the month of February was craziness at GCC. And here's why. Because we'd actually rented actual space in an office building in Cambridge, very close to MIT, near Kendall Square, in what's called the Athenaeum Building at 215 First Street. And we had this basement space. Kevin and Doug negotiated all this. It was an old warehouse manufacturing space. It was Athenaeum Press, which printed greeting cards. And so we had moved in December, January of 82. So we actually, it's like a real company. We've got desks, and we've got our development stuff, and we're working away. And at the beginning of February, Manny, let me think of who it was, Skip Paul and Manny Gerard, who were, Skip Paul was a attorney, Office of the Counsel, blah, blah, for Warner Communications or for Atari. I can't remember which it was. Manny Gerard was Office of the President of Warner Communications. And so they stopped by to visit to see what we're working on. And so early February, they walk around and they're like, I was working on what became the Food Fight playfield graphics hardware. And, here's what I'm working on, and, here's the status of this game, and here's this game we're working on, and they just sort of walk around, hey, good, all right, bye. Hey, we're coming back in a month, we'll stop in and see. So we know they're coming back the beginning of March. So we start this absolute insane amount of hours during the month of February because we want to show off for these guys, right? We want to show off what we're able to do. And so everyone is flat out working on their various projects to show off. So then, 1st of March, Manny or maybe it was Ray Kassar, or I think it was Manny both times, but Ray Kassar and Manny and Skip Paul. And so they come back in 1st of March. And we're like all casual and relaxed. And, hey, good to see you again. Hey, check out what we've, how far along we are on this game. They were massively impressed with how much work we were able to get done in 4 weeks. They were just incredibly impressed. And that was what we were trying to do. We were trying to show off
because you guys weren't doing drugs.
What these guys in Cambridge could do compared to the clowns out in California.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sweet.
So they came to visit in March, and the next day we flew the entire company to Disney World for vacation.
Fantastic.
Which became an annual thing for GCC.
How many employees did you have at GCC at that time?
There were 17 of us that went to Disney World.
Wow.
That first year.
Fantastic.
Okay. Now, some of those were, significant others and whatnot. But basically, it's like 17 or so is like the number of people in the company.
That's cool.
Wow.
All right.
That's funny. I think I was at Disney World that same weekend. I was in 9th grade on a band trip.
Could be. It could be. So I could tell you the dates, but it was like it's like 3 or 4 days the first week of March.
I didn't get to go to Disney World till I was like 15.
I have video. This is great.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So let me tell you, going into your early 20s is the time to go to Disney World because it's a hoot, man.
The early 20s?
That's how old everybody was, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Fantastic.
So it was So that's what we were doing, and then in March, April sort of time frame, Kevin gets this call, and here's the way Kevin tells the story: is so things are happening out at Atari. They lost more of their 2600 programmers.
Sure.
Okay. This is
because they're all going.
The guys left to go make Activision.
Right, and iMagic, right? So those two.
Right, and then guys leave to make iMagic, and then there's not many left, and they're all pissed off and annoyed. The engineers are because they're not getting a chunk of the profits, and so they're starting to make. We're all going to walk. We're all going to get up and leave, and you're Atari. You're going to have nobody to program your cartridges.
Sure.
So somebody at Atari or at Warner realizes, hey, those guys in Cambridge, maybe they could do it. And, okay, this is early 82, right? This is before cell phones. This is before you could reach anybody at a moment's notice. And Kevin happens to be at his here's how he can date it, because he was at his accountant's working on his taxes. So this is early April, all right? And Atari, somebody high up in Atari has to get a hold of Kevin. So they call Cambridge. They call GCC, and they talk to Kevin's secretary. I got to talk to Kevin right now. Where is he? Oh, well, he's at such and such an accountant. And they call up Kevin at his accountant's. Kevin, we have to talk to you right now. Can you program 2600 cartridges? And Kevin's like, sure.
Yeah, we could do anything.
How? Well, no. Kevin says he did some math in his head. He says, so this is 6502 processor, right? And they said, yep. He said, how big are these cartridges? And they said, 2K bytes.
That's terrible for ROM.
Some of them are 4K bytes.
Right.
And Kevin said he did this little math in his head of like, well, it would take you how long to do that? He's like, and he came up with a number. He's like, yeah, we could do it in 9 weeks. Or, something like that.
Wow.
And they worked out a deal right then on the phone how much money we were going to get paid for each of these cartridges. All right?
That is nuts.
And they said, we're sending you the
That is
money
nuts.
today.
Wow.
All right? This is how panicked they were at Atari. And so Kevin
So is
says
this
he
like
gets on the
1983?
phone-
Is this 83?
He gets on the phone and he calls our banker. He calls the company banker
Yeah.
and says, open a new account for us. Money is coming in.
Oh my
And
God.
this money got transferred in from Atari.
Oh my God.
As a down payment to pay for these, and they had negotiated 7 cartridges or something for delivery by mid-September.
And can you remember any of the titles or?
Yeah, one of my presentations, I came up with the list. It was like Rubik's Cube, which eventually became Atari Cube.
Sure.
And Ms. Pac-Man. And
You guys did Ms. Pac-Man for the
Combat 2. We were going to do Combat 2, and so there was this whole list of them. Okay, you got to have them by mid-September.
Wow.
Because it had to be ready for Christmas.
Sure.
And we did it. We got them done.
Ms. Pac-Man is like way better than Pac-Man. It's like
way better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, partly there are 2 reasons. One is because we had more time to do it.
Sure.
And the big reason is we had double the ROM.
Okay.
So getting permission from Atari, if you were an Atari engineer and you went to Atari management and said, I need 4K to do this game, they would turn you down because that costs more money, right? And they said, you have to do Pac-Man in 2K or whatever it was. But all we had to do was convince Kevin and Doug, and they were both engineers. And if you went to them with an engineering excuse, look, I need this much ROM in order to do this game, they'd go, fine.
Yeah.
They didn't care. We got the same payment no matter what.
Right.
If it costs more to Atari, who cares?
Right.
And they understood the big picture. So we could get all this stuff done, and it would get pushed down the throats of the Atari management. Because our contract was not with Atari. Our contract was with Warner. And there was some weird reason why Warner liked that better. But essentially, this product was getting developed by us, handed to Atari. Guys, go build this.
Mm-hmm.
So Ms. Pac-Man was twice as much ROM. And that was the big thing. And it was Doug McCrae. Who was it? Doug and Josh Littlefield. I can't remember who the 2 of them were. And they were absolute geniuses, and they figured out how to shoehorn it in there.
That's so awesome.
So that was it. And we got I don't know. I'd have to dig into one of my presentations. I came up with the list of cartridges, but we had them done by mid-September, like we promised. And Atari was just so absolutely gobsmacked by that.
Yeah.
That we were able to, no problem. We can make these for you.
Fantastic.
And they were very high quality.
Let's switch gears a little bit. How about a little Food Fight conversation? That's one of our favorite arcade games of all time. Can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement in that?
So Food Fight was one of the games that started in early 1982.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Jonathan Hurd, who was everybody knew everybody because they had worked together before at previous companies. And so Jonathan was somebody that Kevin knew because he had worked with him. And so Jonathan comes in and signs up as a new engineer. And the way Jonathan tells it, he shows up and, Kevin, what do you want me to do? Kevin says, come up with a game idea. All right. And so Jonathan sits around and the way Jonathan explains it, he said he started thinking about controls. What are the sort of controls you could have? And what could you do? Oh, well, if you have a joystick, you can run around. Okay, you could run around. And if you had a button, what could you? Well, you could jump, right? Because we had Donkey Kong. And so he started thinking about the controls.
Yeah.
I think before he had the gameplay. And, throw. What if you have a throw button? And you move around and you throw. What could you throw? Oh, throw food. Okay. and that's where it came from.
Oh, interesting.
And it was Jonathan figuring out how to, that sounds like a fun game. And it went from there.
That's fantastic.
From a hardware standpoint, we had been using Donkey Kong hardware to do development work, and because it had very sophisticated graphics support, the early Donkey Kong, and so we used that. But very quickly, us hardware guys, because I was the hardware guy, I wasn't a software guy, started saying, well, we're going to design our own hardware. And what kind of graphics hardware are we going to have? And so there's two parts to the graphics. There's the playfield, which is stationary. Like imagine Pac-Man. There's the playfield, which is stationary, and then there's the stamps, what everyone else called sprites, but we called them stamps because we did not know any better. That's the moving objects.
Sure.
And so we dreamed up this hardware design that had 48 moving objects and had the playfield. And I worked on the playfield, and I actually had a playfield that scrolled, so you could scroll it around, which was kind of cool for some gameplay, for some game designs. Used the 68,000 processor because we wanted to program in a high-level language, and this was all extremely novel stuff. Atari engineers dreamed of doing this, but they could never get permission to do it because it would cost more money.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, we don't care, right? We're going to get a royalty no matter what, and it'll be a better game and easier for us to develop. So 68,000 based, and so eventually that's what the Food Fight hardware was our graphics hardware and processor design. So 68,000 based. It took my scrolling playfield and stripped off the scrolling part because it didn't need it. It had a static playfield, so no need for that complexity. And then it had the 16 moving objects. I'm sorry, the 48 moving objects.
Such an awesome game.
So that was it. And so Jonathan started his development. Yeah, I can't remember what hardware he started with, but pretty quickly he was over onto our hardware and using C. I know he started with Pascal, and that wasn't high enough performance, and he ended up with C. And so that was one of our first two games, with that one plus Quantum, which was designed by Betty
Quantum
Ryan.
is so awesome.
So both of those were being designed in 1982 and then got to market in early 83. I can't remember which was first. One of them was first by a short amount of time.
Quantum is worth a crap ton of money.
Yeah. Quantum's an awesome game. If you can get one and keep it running, it's phenomenal.
I love it.
So that was Betty Ryan. So one of the few women game designers way back then.
Pixel 3. It has the most amazing
the color vector graphics hardware was designed by Art Ing.
That's fantastic.
There you go. So that was the first two arcade games. Well, Ms. Pac-Man, right? Was out at this point, but through Atari was Food Fight and Quantum, and then we had a bunch more that we were working on.
That's a wild ride.
Never made it out.
We have one question from the chat. Annie Ballman is asking to talk about the instant replay feature in Food Fight.
Oh yeah, instant replay. So that was, I believe that was a Jonathan Hurd idea. He dreamed. I don't think someone else suggested it. I think it was Jonathan. I might be wrong, but he coded it up, and he it was this cool thing. He said so he'll code in an algorithm that detects if you had a close call, right? If you got really close to being killed and you managed not to.
Oh, wow.
All right. So, and he had some way of measuring that. Oh, you almost got killed or something like that.
It's kind of like a free ball and a pinball machine.
Yeah, and it would come up and it would say, let's see that again, instant replay.
Sure.
And it would play back exactly what had been, which is pretty straightforward because you can, all you have to do really is remember the motion that the joystick does every 30th of a second. When the machine goes and samples the inputs, It just has to remember that and then just play the game again.
That's awesome.
So it was pretty straightforward. But here's a trivia early on, and there was the really interesting music. So we had a woman named Patty Goodson, who was a professional musician, and she was one of our first employees. And she came in and she wrote this music that could be adaptively plugged together to make exactly the right length of time to match the instant replay. Oh, I need an instant replay that's 14 seconds long. And, well, if you put together this measure and this measure and this measure, you get this musical snippet that's exactly the right length.
Huh.
All right? Very sophisticated. So that's the one difference between the game play and the instant replay, is there's this music playing in the background. Okay?
Huh.
Well, it turned out that when Jonathan first coded this up, that slight change was enough to change the timing of the gameplay to where sometimes you would get killed during the instant replay.
Oh my God, I knew that.
All right.
Great.
So because it was the gameplay was a little bit slower because it had to play the music.
Yeah.
Right? And so Jonathan had to code things carefully so that that would not happen, and it would exactly run at exactly the same speed, so that instant replay exactly replicated the play, even though you were getting the music in the background. So that was a cool thing, and I think that was the first game that did it. I don't know if other games have done that or not, but there's instant replay.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, he wants to know games that didn't make it out. So let's see, some arcade games that we had. There was a game called Rock Slide, which actually got really far along, and I think it went out on test, and it did not test very well. And so that's why it never went to market. And it was sort of a kind of maze-like game. If you're looking at the screen, it was a vertical-oriented game, and you start at the bottom of the screen, and you're climbing the mountain. You have to get to the top of the mountain. But there's these creatures, ogres and whatnot, and they are throwing rocks down on you. And so, like rock slides, you have to avoid the rocks while you're climbing up. And so that was the basic gameplay. So it's sort of a maze game, kind of a maze-like game. Roland Janberg's worked on that one.
That's fantastic.
Any code still exists? I don't think so. I think it's long gone.
Oh, yeah.
Roland might have some printouts of it.
Interesting.
But I think that one is long gone. The one that got the closest is a game called Nightmare. And that actually went out on test. And the ROMs ended up being found at Atari years later, and somebody was able to resurrect it.
Fantastic.
So I know if you go out to California Extreme, there's a guy out there who has a working Nightmare. And let me tell you, what a bizarre experience it was playing that after 30 years.
Wow.
And walking, and how much of that game I remembered from playing it in the lab. And it's like, wow! And there's all kinds of inside jokes built into it. A lot of the names and the numbers and the backgrounds and whatnot all had to do with people at GCC and the offices that we had. So if you go to California Extreme, you can probably play Nightmare. So there was that game. I think the game that I most regret that we never got out was a game called Laser Rail. And we talked about Laserdisc earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Laser Rail was going to be a Laserdisc game.
Oh, cool. And
here's the premise behind Laser Rail. Well, if you remember the early Laserdisc games, they would pause when you had to jump, right?
Yep.
And so it was this jerky thing that you would get to a certain point, and they had to scan to a different spot on the laser on the disc in order to do the next part of the gameplay.
Sure.
So by the time we were looking at this, they had figured out how to jump the Laserdisc players were sophisticated enough where they could jump a certain number of frames instantaneously without showing any kind of a gap. So if you were smart about how you arranged all the frames on the disc, you didn't have to play it sequentially. You could imagine you could jump 5 frames every time. Okay? So now you can have 5 different video streams that you could jump between with absolutely seamless playback. You with me?
Yep.
All right. So given that capability, what kind of game could you come up with? And Brad Parker worked on this, and I can't recall who else, but Brad was one of the big players on this. And the idea was what was on the Laserdisc was not going to be cartoons like, what was the first one?
Dragon's Lair.
Dragon's Lair, yeah. Not cartoons like Dragon's Lair. It was going to be computer-generated graphics so that when it came up on the screen, it would look like it was being played back like every other arcade. So, and then overlaid on that was going to be stuff from the actual graphics hardware. So you would get this incredibly sophisticated graphics experience, but most of it is coming off of the Laserdisc. So you do not have to generate it on the fly.
Sure.
Wow.
And they were talking to the various movie effects people out in Hollywood who were doing the graphics for the movies at that time, like Tron and Last Starfighter and all those guys.
Very cool.
They were saying, hey, we need you to generate content for us. Oh, yeah, we can do this. So this was all underway. And the gameplay, I have some sketches of this, I think, stashed away somewhere. But the premise of the game is that you have landed on this planet that is long abandoned, and the creatures that used to live here have abandoned this planet, and we don't know where they are. But the laser rail system still seems to be working, and this was imagine like a monorail that is how you would get from place to place on the surface of the planet.
Cool.
And so imagine 3 beams of light shooting out from in front of you off to the horizon.
It's a little Tron-esque.
Yes. So that's the laser rail. And so you're riding on one of those 3 beams of light.
It's
and
like
you could jump from one rail to the next.
It's like the solar sail in Tron.
Yeah, exactly. Similar sort of thing. Tron was out at this point, and so you were sort of inspired by that. And so that was going to be the gameplay. And so you were going to ride the laser rail, and you would go from city to city, and there would be gaps in the rail because of it was old and decrepit, and you had to make sure you jumped to a rail that didn't have the gap in it, and you would go to places and do interesting gameplay, and so that was laser rail.
That sounds cool.
Wow. Yeah, and imagine the background. The background is all computer-generated, amazing-looking, spacey stuff.
Oh, that would have sold so well.
Yeah, that would have been cool. And with hardware that was not terribly expensive, because the graphics hardware would be like food fight quality, and then you'd have this Laserdisc machine, and off you go.
It's fantastic.
So Laser Rail, that would have been cool. That would have been a cool game. So yeah, that never made it.
You're making me sad that it never made anywhere.
Yeah, I know.
Well, Steve,
so that was Laser Rail.
I got to tell you, man. I mean,
and there were some other games that arcade games, because we were owned by Warner, right?
Sure.
So we had the entire Warner movie library to draw on. All right.
What year is this at this point? It's 1980.
This is 83.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
82, 83, 84.
Sure.
We're thinking about games. Oh, what's the number one thing that Warner Communications owns? Oh, they own the Roadrunner.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do a Roadrunner game. Of course, the protagonist in the Roadrunner game has got to be the coyote, right?
Right. Yep.
And the coyote always loses. So trying to come up with a game play for Roadrunner and Coyote. So that was one thing that we were looking at. But one game that got pretty far along, another thing that Warner owned was Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a Road Warrior game. So it's a driving game, you're in the Australian outback with all the cool vehicles and the stuff blowing up and the fuel everywhere, and you've got to get enough fuel, and so that was Road Warrior.
They own Risky Business too. Did you do anything with that?
No, didn't think about that one.
So close.
But that was a favorite movie of ours, was Risky Business, and one of the, we're guys, right? And
yeah.
Not everyone, but guys, and so people love movie quotes.
Yeah.
And so that was one of our favorite movie quotes was from Risky Business, which when things were not going well, and you were just about to throw up your hands and well, looks like University of Illinois.
Wow. I thought you were going to go with what the F.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
No. It's looks like University. How are things going on your project? Well, looks like University of Illinois. That bad, huh?
That is bad.
Oh my God, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Steve, I want to...
So we never got to 7800. You asked about 7800.
Oh, yeah, well, okay, let's...
So what happened with 7800 was we started doing cartridges, right?
I got to say to you.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you, but I'm where everybody's listening, so this is great. If you want to keep going, I know you're not feeling well, but the 7800, I'm totally into this. You got to tell us. I'll
give you the quick story, the quick beginning of it, all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what started was in early '82. We start doing cartridges, and so we're doing development, and the name, the code name inside Atari was Stella. The 2600 was called Stella.
Yep.
And so, we're coding for Stella, and then they said, can you do 5200? I'm like, yeah, what the hell? And that was PAM.
Okay.
So we're doing cartridges for 2600. We're doing cartridges for 5200. And one of the cartridges we did, well, first of all, cartridges started to run out of room, and so they started doing bank switching in the cartridges, in the ROM.
Yeah.
Right? And so you started getting the idea of, it's not just a simple ROM. You could, do stuff.
Yeah.
And Atari had come up with a fancy ROM that actually had more memory in it. It had RAM. And one of our designs, Dig Dug, used it, and the engineer Ava Robin Cohen, another female designer early on in the world, worked on Dig Dug for 2600 and had this cool, sophisticated hardware. So the idea of putting stuff on the cartridge slot that would enhance the gameplay was something that we had started thinking about. What can we do? And there were a bunch of these things that were starting up in the industry.
She was involved with the Junior Pac-Man port.
What's that?
She was involved with the Junior Pac-Man port for Atari.
For Junior Pac-Man cartridge?
Yeah, was it for the arcade or for the cartridge?
May have done some work on the arcade. Most of that was Bruce Burns and I'm sorry, I just blanked on Tim Hoskins. Tim Hoskins and Bruce Burns were the two software guys.
I'm reading something,
Baby or Junior Pac-Man.
I'm reading something that says she's credited for Junior Pac-Man, the CX26123 ROM for the 2600.
Okay. She very much very possibly she could have worked on 2600.
That's fantastic.
Junior Pac-Man. I don't know.
I have this goal
but
this
she definitely
year.
worked on Dig Dug.
Cool.
All right.
Go on.
And so we were thinking about this, and 5200 had come out, right? And it was not nearly as successful as Atari had planned for it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it was obvious what people wanted was backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing. Was Doug was like, "What can we do? What can we do to 2600 to make it better?"
Tia Maria.
Well, it wasn't Tia Maria. Eventually, well, what it started out was, just TIA with more players. Okay, so take TIA and spiff it up a little bit. And we very quickly realized that TIA was so primitive that trying to modify it was just a nightmare. It's like, fine. You want compatibility? We'll just stick a TIA on the board.
Sure.
And now you've got your compatibility.
Yeah. So now
we can do whatever the hell we want.
You're basically running a 2600 on the board no matter what, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Well, right. The thought was it would operate in either of two modes.
Sure.
And so you could be, it'll be a 2600. We'll put a TIA on the board. What does that cost? Nothing.
Yep. Exactly.
And you use a 6502 processor. Fine. We're happy with that. We're familiar with it. Run it faster. And so that's how this is beginning of 1983. And we start up and we said, we're going to do this spiffier chip, this custom chip that's going to do graphics and sound, and that's going to be the base unit. And we'll have it done for December of '83. We were nuts. We were insane that we were going to do it that quickly.
And there's a huge story behind this too. I mean, so the TIA, you put the 2600 native compatibility on there, and then you invent Maria. Basically, GCC is like, we're innovating, and Jack Tramiel comes along and he buys the home division of Atari right about the time you're doing this, right?
So in '83, we start really ramping up on this project, which was originally called the 3600. And so we've got people who are still doing coin-op stuff. We have people who are still doing Stella carts and doing PAM carts. And by this time, we're doing other platforms as well, particularly our own titles, like Ms. Pac-Man. We did Ms. Pac-Man for, Commodore 64 and things like that. So 83. But this 3600 project starts up, and by the fall of '83, it looks like this is going to be the huge thing for Atari. Atari and Warner are huge behind this. They think this is just going to be awesome. And we realize there's no way we're going to make it for December of '83, but we'll do December of '84. That's our target now. And so all through '83 and the beginning of '84, we're doing our chip design. We're doing 14 cartridges. We're doing all this other stuff like the high score cartridge and the typewriter and the computer, and it's just going to be this awesome thing. And it gets announced in May of '84.
Yeah.
For Christmas. But Atari is hemorrhaging money, right? They've lost this insane amount of money as the crash is happening, and Warner sells them.
Yep.
Warner sells Atari to Jack Tramiel.
And then
it all just fell apart.
Yeah, that was just a mess. That could be a whole show in of itself. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge mess, and it's unfortunate because GCC was at the peak. Like you guys, there's some underlying stories that we can't talk about right now because we'll go on too long. But it's like Nintendo was courting Atari for distribution in the U.S. at the same time you're building the 7800.
Yes,
and it's like, okay, we're, Atari's kind of leading them on, and there's this whole thing like, well, we have this 7800 system, we could blow them out of the water, and so we can't distribute this, and then Nintendo's like, screw you guys, we're going home, and they they build Nintendo of America, and they drop the NES on the entire country, and in 1985.
85.
I mean, they
right.
frickin' won the war.
If Atari, I look back on this and like, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
If 7800 had come out in Christmas of '84,
yeah,
you know, it would have been phenomenal. And would there ever have been an NES?
It would have been.
That was as popular as it was.
It's iffy, right? It would have been like, but it cost too much money, and we already got the 7800.
Yeah.
So I think.
But NES, you know, kudos to Nintendo because they realized that video games were still still a big market.
Right.
And everyone else was like, oh well, that fad is done.
They recharged.
And they walked away.
They recharged the home market.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. Kudos to them. But 7800 coming out in fall of '84 would have been absolutely phenomenal. Because when it finally came out in '86,
2 years later,
it did really well.
Yeah, it did. But it was like, okay, but also you have stale launch titles, right? Because you have like 20 launch titles that are like 5, 6, 7 years old. Nobody wants to play that stuff anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had 14. We had 14 launch titles.
Right.
And some of which and then Ball Blazer, which wasn't quite done.
Pokey Chip.
And which was absolutely phenomenal. I think it's just the best game ever.
It's a great game. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the first.
Anyway, that's the quick 7800 story.
Yeah.
So,
and that was the first game to take advantage of the Pokey. Am I right?
Yeah, Ball Blazer did.
Yeah.
Yes. It needed, because it had very sophisticated sound. Well, okay, so Maria, our custom chip for 7800, initially it was going to have sound as well. So we were going to do graphics. We were going to do sound all on our custom chip. And so when you went into 7800 mode, it would be better graphics, better sound, better everything. But we ran out of time, we ran out of silicon area, and so jettisoning sound was like the first thing we did.
Yeah.
We got rid of sound. We said, oh, okay, fine, we'll use the crappy TIA sound.
Sure.
But we'll design the system in such a way that you could put a sound, you could have a sound chip on every cartridge.
Right. A little more expensive.
We designed a chip called, originally we had a chip called Gumby. Okay? Because, Atari had a chip called Pokey, while ours was called Gumby.
That's hilarious.
And that was for aimed at arcade games, so it was sound synthesis for arcade games. And then we said, oh, well, we're gonna do a stripped down version of Gumby, called Mini Gumby, and then it just became called Mini.
Mm-hmm.
And Mini was this incredibly cheap but very sophisticated sound synthesis chip that is cheap enough to go on every cartridge. So that was going to be the 7800 solution, was we had this chip called Mini. And so that's how your 7800 cartridges would have very high-quality sound.
Wow.
And so Ball Blazer was designed from the start. It was going to use Mini to get very high-quality sound. But it never got done. And when Ball Blazer, Jack Trammell contracted with one of the GCC guys to finish Ball Blazer, and he said, you have to do it. You got to come up with an audio chip, and the only audio chip was Pokey. So that's how Pokey ended up on Ball Blazer.
Awesome.
Oh wow!
It got coded in that way, and so that's how you get this beautiful music. And the music, that's a great story. That Peter Langston, who was at Lucasfilm, right? That's where Ball Blazer came from. Came from Lucasfilm, or Lucas Games. And Peter Langston, he was friends with a bunch of big-name jazz people like Pat Metheny. Okay, he used to jam with these guys. So he got all his jazz friends to write little riffs for him, and that's the music that's in Ball Blazer.
Amazing.
It's from all these jazz artists who all gave, I just need 2 measures from you. And the people GCC people who looked at the source code said he listed all the names of all the people in there. But nobody could talk about it because, of course, you cannot get, all these artists are...
Right, no, you'd have to pay royalties or something.
You'd have to pay them royalties,
yeah,
right?
That's
and
messed
so
up.
they were like doing it for fun. And
that's
so,
hilarious.
but all the names are in there. And that's the Ball Blazer music. So all that really cool, sophisticated music, because it randomly plugs together these various bits of music from all the various artists to make the what seems like an improvisational riff going on in Ball Blazer.
Well, I got to tell you, this has been fantastic, and I don't want to wrap it up, but we need to wrap it up for tonight for sure.
Yeah, let's wrap it up because I'm about to collapse.
But
here,
hey,
we'll talk another time.
Can we do a part 2 with you, because this has been fascinating? I mean,
sure.
This is so awesome. I really appreciate being on the show. Dan is about ready to, Keylor, he's got to go take care of his kid.
Got to put my kid to bed.
I know how that is.
Got to do it.
And
my youngest is 21, so
I love it.
You don't have my problem.
We have a 20.
No, not yet. I remember though.
We have a 21, a 15, a 16, and a 19. So we're kind of in your boat.
Okay.
But
you're getting there.
This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Sure.
And we would love to have you back on again. So, hey.
Yeah, we'll work it out. We'll figure it out. Be happy to.
And stay on for a couple minutes after we sign off here, but I just got to, I got to thank you again. This has been the Season 3 premiere of the Arcade Radio podcast. Guys, we will have Steve on again. This was just a fantastic time tonight. It's the Double R's, Arcade Radio. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on SoundCloud. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us all over the internet if you're looking. It's Arcade Radio without the A at the beginning. And feel free to dial in and leave a message like Bob does every week, because we love that. So, Steve, again, thank you for being on the show. Mark,
thank you.
Thank you for being on.
Let me give you a little hint of what's to come.
All right.
If we can figure out how to get me on the video, then I can show off some of my goodies here.
We will do that for the next episode.
I've got some prototype things and whatnot, so we might be able to have stuff to show off.
Well, how about a mid-season show? You come on and we'll get you hooked up with a video, and we can do that, because I think that'd be fantastic.
Sure. Sounds good.
And we got some good guests coming up. We got like I said, Steve Barbie from Grinkfest. We're gonna do a postmortem next week. We got Darren from Phoenix Arcade will be on in a couple of weeks. So stay with us. Again, Arcade Radio. We'll talk to you soon.
This is a weird end of the show song.
Well, I usually do the bookend, right?
Right.
I could do that. This is season 3, though.
Yeah, I guess you got to change it up.
Dan likes this song.
Yeah. It's like I'm at an EDM concert.
All right, I'm going to crash this out. Here we go.